Criticism is a very important part of financial markets. Criticism is a very important part of democracy. I want to talk in this episode about two types of criticism. The ones that we see a lot, which we call vulgar criticism, short sellers in particular that use vulgar techniques and vulgar language to support their thesis. And then there's the good criticism, which sometimes intellectual call critical rationalist or any kind of explanation that tries to use Popperian approaches to problem solving. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds here in terms of definitions. I just want to call it the good criticism versus the bad criticism. So the good criticism versus bad. I want to talk about this in this episode. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. I think it's very important for people to understand that when you take a position, let's say you're long Tesla, you're going to see a lot of people attacking your position, and you're going to feel bad about this. And I think I want to give people a sense for the way to detect vulgar criticism, which is not good, meaning it's not dangerous for a position, but then there's also good criticism. And I think part of the job of a hedge fund manager is to be able to distinguish those two types of criticisms and take the good criticism seriously and ignore the vulgar criticism. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's November 16, 2021. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, the fund is up 2.2%. The market's up 20 basis points. For the year, we are up 41%. The market is up 22.8%. We are outperforming by 18.2%. So let's talk about criticism. Criticism in the Popperian approach to philosophy is a very good thing. So you look at any kind of idea and you try to find flaws in the idea. You try to falsify the idea. You try to validate the idea by not finding ways to falsify the idea. And if you can replace the idea with a better idea, then you've achieved something. This is in general how, at least in a short version of a definition, Popperianism works. And it's a good thing. So we want to be critical. We want to be critical of our ideas. We want to be critical of our thinking. We want to be critical of our approaches. And for hedge fund managers, of course, we want to be critical about our positions. We're not paid to be right. We're paid to make money. We literally get paid as part of the profit we make for our customers. So nobody pays us for being right. Nobody pays us for defending our ideas. Nobody pays us for any of that stuff. In the end of the year, our customers look at the performance of the fund. They absolutely, literally don't care how we got there. They just want to make money, and then they give us a cut of the profit. This is how it works. So knowing that, we shouldn't be wasting our time fighting a political fight. Well, this is right, this is wrong. We are on this side of the fence, you are on that side. All of these things don't matter. And you'll be shocked that, in fact, a lot of people exactly do that. We have analysts, even hedge fund managers, or at least alleged hedge fund managers, who spend days, particularly now in the age of social media, on Twitter, attacking companies with very vulgar criticism. And this is the other part of criticism. I call it the vulgar criticism. Vulgar in a very unsophisticated, sort of hostile, Philistine way, like hostile against intellectual thought, against technological knowledge, against explanatory knowledge, or any of those things are being thrown out of the window, and you're using, or these people are using very basic, low-level thinking to justify their point. So it's very similar to a political fight. Like, we have a lot of fights in our democracy, which are good fights to have, political fights. Should we have more equality in our schools? Should we have more, should we take money from the rich, give it to the poor? Should we have communism? Should we have capitalism? Those are political fights. People have opinions. People fight for their rights. All these things are fine. I don't have a problem with that, as long as, of course, we have a certain process to make decisions and then we all abide to the rules. Now, in the financial markets, that's not how it works. Financial markets are not political arenas, because in financial markets, you are investing in companies that compete in the marketplace, and you want them to succeed as companies and make money for you, and then that's how you pay your investors if you're an investment company, for example. You're not being paid for being right or having the right idea or even a moral idea or something like that. You're not being paid for that. Now, of course, I can see the lines being blurred sometimes. Let's say if you fight against Tesla, you are protecting the unions. So you, in some way, are protecting a certain class of people that whose livelihood is in danger by the disruptor. So I can see that there is a certain blurred line between politics and business. I understand that, but that is not the business of a fund manager to fight that fight. That is the business of a lobbyist and all those things. When it comes to financial markets, what matters is critical, rational thinking. Critical is fine. You need to understand what is wrong about my idea. Can I improve my idea? Vulgar criticism is dangerous because it puts you in a position where you're fooling yourself. Michael Burry is a very good example, and I rarely point out names, but this person is just, in my view, wrong in many ways. He made money in one particular area of the markets, mortgages and all that, and that's fine. Kudos to him. Now he's trying to make money by going against disruptive technologies, of which he doesn't understand nothing. The way he's doing it with the tweets and deleting tweets is just cowardly and shows that there is not a lot of conviction behind it. So in the end, there is this cowardly approach towards an idea that for some reason this person is trying to propel, and it's not working, it's not making money, but even worse, it's making him look like he doesn't know what he's doing. And I really don't understand why somebody would do that. Now, let's take a critical, rational approach towards shorting Tesla. Let's be very concrete. So we at Orange Capital Partners do that often. We look at our position and we say, okay, let's take the other side. Let's go into a conference, let's go into a meeting and attack the position from any which way we can. For example, do we want to pay $1.2 trillion or $1 trillion or whatever it is right now in market cap for a company that looks like Tesla? Why would we do that? Well, let's say we don't want to do that. Because what? Because the number one reason you never want to invest in a company is always competition. Competition is by far the most important factor that can derail your investment. In fact, I had an episode last week about this where we spoke about this in this podcast a lot, that the theory of economics is actually a theory of competitive response. So everything in economics is, if you want to distinguish the world into political and economic, then you can basically say the political realm is where competitive response doesn't necessarily is not necessarily the only outcome, while in economics it is the only outcome. The only thing that matters is how are you going to respond to competitive threats. They can come from competitors, they can come from politics, they can come from social issues. Any kind of attack to your status quo needs to be answered with a competitive response, and this is what economics really is. Now, having said that, the business of a hedge fund manager, therefore, is incredibly rooted in economics. And this is also why I believe for everybody out there who is actually doing Econ 101 right now and thinking, why am I doing this? This is why you're doing it. If you want to be in the business of wealth generation, it's an incredibly good subject to study because it helps you understand competitive response. But you need to look at the subject from that perspective. And don't get entangled with all the other stuff that economics throws at you, because then it can become the dismal science and some sort of gibberish. If you look at it from a theory of competitive response, which helps you generate wealth, it can become a very useful theory. Now, having said that, let's get back to the how I distinguish vulgar criticism versus rational criticism. Now, the vulgar criticism is the one where we just look at criticism and we try to rationalize our innate opposition to a stock, for example, Tesla. And the rational criticism would be we try to criticize Tesla in the best way possible without having any prejudice or anything like that. And let's try to do that. So we just established that the only angle we want to look at any kind of money-making opportunity is from the perspective of competitive response. In other words, the criticism we're going to exhibit towards our investments, it's going to be about how can they respond to competitive threats. And if the answer is they can't, then we shouldn't be invested. And if the answer is they can, then it's a good investment. This is a simplified version, but we believe it is the absolute key. The theory of competitive response is, in fact, the theory of wealth creation, or it's highly, highly correlated. So Tesla's competitive response to competitive threats is going to be to build a cost structure that enables Tesla to always produce better products and services at lower price. This is in general how every disruptor works. In the case of Tesla, we've decided that this is the key advantage of Tesla, which is they have been able to lower their cost of iteration to the point where they continuously improve their products and services and always outperform competition. This is fundamentally why we are invested in Tesla. And from a theory of competitive response perspective, Tesla is a good investment. Vulgar criticism on Tesla is things like, well, the competition will kill them. For example, Qualcomm announced today that they're going to build a computer vision system for BMW. Let's look at this particular example. It is very highly likely that Tesla's cost advantage in terms of vision and fully integrated all the way to the chip, to the inference chip and the training chip, which is Project Dojo, is going to be a lot more cost effective and deliver a lot better results than this cooperation between Qualcomm and BMW. We could be wrong about this, but again, what matters here is not to be right or wrong. What matters here is to have the right perspective. What are we even looking at? How are we thinking about this problem? And the way we're thinking about this problem when it comes, let's say, to full self-driving with Tesla is not, are they going to achieve level 4 or 5, all that rubbish. That's not what matters. What matters is, does Tesla have a product and service, have a technology stack in place that can improve their business, improve their products and services continuously? And the answer is yes, because the cost of iteration is much, much lower than the cost of iteration that, let's say, BMW and Qualcomm will have, the cost of iteration that NVIDIA has, the cost of iteration that many have. Maybe Waymo not, but again, we believe Waymo has other issues. So within that particular example, we just have, is our opinion that the Tesla stack is such that their cost of iteration is lower, therefore they'll be able to outperform their competition, and therefore from a theory of competitive response perspective, Tesla is a good investment. Let's look at other types of competitive threats. The political threat. We've outlined that this is one of the biggest risks, if not the biggest risk of Tesla. That the Biden administration, with its constituency, the unions, could be a problem for Tesla. We believe that given the US political system, given the backlash now against too far left-leaning COVID policies of Biden and what happened in Virginia and what's happening in, let's say, Pennsylvania and places like that, which are swing states, we believe that the political climate in the US is shifting away from the far left again, and therefore the risk towards Tesla is lower. We still believe that the Tesla competitive response when it comes to actually political threats is not very good. Look at how Elon Musk is engaging, let's say, with Bernie Sanders. We've said that in several episodes in the last couple of weeks. This whole issue with taxes and all that conversation, it's a huge waste of time. Musk should not be engaged in that kind of conversation because it's a vulgar conversation. It's vulgar criticism towards him and Tesla. It's not worth criticizing, particularly coming from people like Bernie Sanders, who are demagogues. They don't have a policy in place that actually even protects their own constituency. This applies also to another left-leaning tax politician such as Elizabeth Warren. If Elizabeth Warren is really is going to be judged about her results when it comes to, let's say, protecting the financial markets from fraud and profiteering, she's failed. Bernie Sanders should have been in the business of creating more equity and equality around the country. Well, he's not. I mean, we have a lot less equity and equality. In many ways, all these so-called equity and equality policies that people like that are propagating are actually even worse for the people that should be profiting from them. such as, for example, if you increase taxes and then entrepreneurs leave your area, then you have less jobs and all that stuff. So what I'm trying to say here is that Musk should not be engaging with people like that. He is engaging, which shows me that the competitive response of Tesla, in particular the CEO Elon Musk, towards the threat of these tax-mongering people in Congress and whatnot, politicians like that, is not a good one. So that's a risk. So this is critical. Again, the purpose of this podcast, the purpose of this particular episode is to give a bit of an overview of how we feel about criticism. And this is the criticism we have towards Tesla. We've said that in one of the previous episodes also. The best way for Elon Musk to fulfill his duty as a citizen is to have as much money tied up to Tesla, because Tesla is, as a company, doing exactly what the purpose of the United States as a country from its foundation is, which is to create better opportunity for future generations, and to do that by also minimizing the coercion by any kind of centralized state power. This is exactly what Tesla is doing. This is what the founding fathers would be signing if I asked them now, what is in a nutshell, the purpose of the United States? And Tesla is doing exactly that. So selling Tesla shares to pay taxes, to go into a situation that I would say is less than optimal when it comes to the initial purpose of the United States, is not a good thing. The right thing to do is not to pay taxes, to keep your stake in Tesla, because Tesla as a company is doing exactly what the United States as a country was supposed to do, which is, again, build opportunity for future generations and reduce coercion by state power. Another competitive response that Tesla has to deal with is the response in terms of energy and the energy companies attacking the idea of not using fossil fuels. And we believe that that fight is one that is not a risk, because the fight has been won by exactly how disruptors win fights, which is it is the total cost of ownership of having a non-fossil fuel car at this point is so much better than a fossil fuel car that it is therefore almost futile to fight that fight. So I'm just listing other types of criticism, and I'm happy to read more in comments if you have any ideas. Just find me critical, rational criticisms about Tesla instead of the vulgar criticism, which is the kind of criticism, let's say, that Michael Burry would say. He would say things like, well, Elon Musk is borrowing against his shares, and then he would delete that tweet. What does that even mean? What is this kind of tacit criticism? Is it criticism about are you alluding to something? Are you saying something? Are you just doing this so you can later say I was right if something goes wrong? What is this? So this is what we call vulgar criticism. To summarize, there's two types of criticism. There's the good one, which is the critical, rational thinking about your investment. There's the bad one, which is the vulgar criticism. Like I just said, for example, just tacit statements which mean nothing and then maybe later on can be used as, oh, I said so kind of arguments. And we believe that as a hedge fund manager, you have to be very careful taking those tacit, vulgar criticisms too seriously. Try to ignore them, but then focus on the critical criticism, the critical rational thinking that can be useful. For example, like I said, within Tesla, we have a problem. The political threat towards Tesla and the response that Tesla is doing, particularly Elon Musk, is choosing to respond to those political threats is a risk, because he's not doing very well on that front. And he has a lot to improve on that front. But as far as the marketplace is concerned, and as far as the threats towards Tesla are concerned from the marketplace, we're very comfortable. And those are the most important threats that the company, any kind of wealth generation situation, in our view, always has to be boiled down towards, okay, what is the competitive threat and how are they responding? And on that front, Tesla is doing extremely well. Thank you.